Hey, this is Steve Good on the Coin Chat, back with David Atkinson for part 2 on our discussions on currency design versus fundraising, kind of versus building a business and where coins and tokenomics and currency design all kind of fit into this. So David, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Cool. So last time when we got together, we talked about the first 5 of your 10 points. We thought we'd get through all 10. I think we were a bit ambitious. But do you want to just quickly read off what the first 5 were that we talked about? And then I'll put a link up above here so people can click over and check that out in case they want to know our riveting discussion on those first 5.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was a great intro discussion. And just to really summarize that, what we're looking at is designing a currency that is both fit for purpose for the fundraising mechanism you're choosing, as well as fit for purpose for building the economy that you want to build post-fundraising. No point building a currency that's great for fundraising and terrible for your economy, or vice versa. So That's what these questions are designed to tease out. The first one is generally, are you struggling with your token economics? And we talk through why people are, why people aren't. Then, are your users your community? Does your business reward your users for efficient and value-added work? Can you describe the value of your business through your currency design? Does your currency design capture the value that you're creating? And does your business work better if your supply of currency is fixed, preset, or varies with demand?
Cool. Yeah, and we had some great discussions on that. So
yeah, and we're looking at the framework from, are you building a security? Are you building a fixed supply coin? Or are you building a community kind of coin? And then we kind of touched on the IEO, ICO, STO, and the different fundraising mechanisms.
Yeah, cool. So let's jump in. So what was the 6th question you had now, or the 6th point?
Okay, so the 6th point is, are your users incentivized to hold, to exit early, or to use your currency?
Ooh. Well, that's a great question, because there's also another counterpoint to that, which is you're told you have to hold your coins and you're locked in and you can't do anything, which is not incentivizing and is not motivating and it's not rewarding. It's just, sorry, you have to hold your coins. Unfortunately, that's in the US a big problem because of this whole accredited investor thing. But I've also seen projects that are saying, sorry, you have to hold your coins and get locked 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. So I'm throwing that at you too, because it's another consideration.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think that's sort of the big tension in the 2017, 2018, 2019 different fundraising strategies, where projects that might have raised seed funding last year are going public funding this year, but the rates are better in the public than the seed investors got, as well as the seed investors might have a lockup period.
Yeah, and I'm also seeing a lot of things where syndicates are basically demanding, 50%, 70%, 80% discount on coin price, which isn't new, but it's becoming much more transparent that that's going on because they want to flip the stuff. And that's, of course, where you get the big problem about the early stage crypto investors, many of which are, Asian, but not all of them, where you see these big blocks of people buying a, ridiculous amount of coins at 80% discount with the intention of flipping on the open on the market. And that goes back to your question of how do you incentivize people to hold coins?
Exactly.
And if we look at projects like Theta Token, I mean, what they've done, which I really love, is the fact that they've got a dual token model, one where they have a token. They don't have a masternode project as such, but what they say is stake your tokens and you'll get rewarded with our fuel tokens that you can then use to run them and use them on the platform. So they're literally encouraging you to hold one so that you earn the other to spend it on the platform, which I really like because it's creating a mechanism of, reducing supply in one space in order to increase the supply and the usage on the other. And it's a really clever way to kind of dually incentivize as well people to behave with the right mechanisms or ways. But of course, as we both know, if the coin starts tanking on the market, you're not going to sit there staking coins because you're probably more interested in, oh my God, it's dropping, I better get out. And that's, of course, doesn't help the situation. But reducing supply certainly will squeeze the market generally toward the upside rather than the downside.
Exactly. So, and this question really comes down to, again, like, what are you designing, both how you're attracting and raising funds and the economy that you're trying to build. So if you're incentivizing people to hold, then you're really trying to build security. People are investing, are participating to extract long-term value from what you're trying to build, or that you've got a mechanism for creating price inflation.
Yeah.
And it's, the whole example is really interesting, because when people think about, say, like they talk about, well, can you make payments with Bitcoin or not? And technically, for me, it's not a technical question. It's a much more of a social question, because the social question comes down to is how do I feel about using this particular currency? How do I feel about using it for general use? And so we have, like, I'd say, like, the most successful tokens have captured, psychologically or emotionally captured our hearts and made and helped us want to hold these particular coins.
Yeah,
in our wallets.
it's an interesting point, because I mean, I've talked in previous episodes about how do you start by raising awareness of a project? How do you get to the point where they invest, which is a 6-step process? And then there's kind of a 7th step, which people don't often talk about, which is going from investing to creating brand loyalty. And I always use Apple as a great example of that, because awareness is there. Everyone knows Apple, and you don't have to go through the steps of trying to figure out if the product's kind of fit for you and whether it's relevant to your life and whether it's something you want to be a part of. You know, either I want Apple or I don't. It's as simple as that. And once you buy it, you're already loyal, because you discover very quickly it integrates and it works together, and you can tell I'm an Apple person. But I wasn't an Apple person to start, but once I flipped, it was like immediate, straight to loyalty. So what I see with a lot of these tokens is there's no loyalty creation being created. And if you don't create any form of loyalty to the brand, why would I hold the coins? My only interest is buy, flip, sell, flip, buy, flip, whatever. And if you look at what, I mean, dare I say, Tron has done with BitTorrent. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Tron, and I know it's been called out as early days of a scam, and they copied other people's white papers, and they did a lot of things that probably shouldn't have done. But what they're doing right now by encouraging people to hold Tron to get free airdrops of BitTorrent tokens, and equally the way that they're trying to create this whole ecosystem with BitTorrent tokens to, you know, get people to buy the tokens and hold them, it's rather interesting, because actually it's created some stability more than you would have expected. Most people are expecting BitTorrent tokens to go flying, but they created such a huge amount of them at such a low price that it's probably not going to go up that much. But equally, getting people to hold Tron tokens should actually squeeze the supply to drive the price up, which we haven't seen happen yet, but I suspect at some point you probably will. So just interesting examples of how people are trying to encourage loyalty to the brand, loyalty by holding coins, getting something by doing something. So, you know, it's like anything. If I'm going to do something for you, what are you going to do for me? And I like the idea that you're going to give me some sort of reward for holding on to the coins. Okay, that's cool. Can I use the coin for something? You can use them in the ecosystem. You know, you can participate and do other things. But a lot of projects just don't build the brand in. They don't bring the loyalty into it. They stop at invest, and then it's flip or buy more or flip, or, you know, why would you hold? Because for me, the holding and staying loyal are connected. It's the same thing. It's either I'm loyal to the brand and the company, or I'm just a trader.
Yep. And it's really interesting for me when we're thinking about organizations that are trying to create the conditions to hold. I think I'm waiting for the day where it's on CoinMarketCap, but it's because it's not the circulating supply that's interesting for me, because actually a lot of the cases, the circulating supply versus the total supply, the people who hold that gap want to be selling right now.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's
got to be the most painful part, right? All these guys that had 2-year lockups.
Exactly.
Now going, oh my God, I can finally sell my coins, and I wouldn't ever do it because it's down 90%.
Exactly. So it's actually the proportion of the supply that is in regular movement and the proportion of supply that's in consideration of moving. They're the interesting dynamics to factor in when you're thinking about a currency where the intention is to create a mechanism around holding, because you're right, in fixed supply world, that what you're trying to do is find different ways of constraining that supply under consideration to move.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can hold, if I get benefits from making sure that I keep this in my wallet, then we're creating, within our fixed supply, we're creating all of these psychological mechanisms for price increases.
That's right.
What we're really trying to avoid, and this is where like the plague of, as people have perceived, like the VC investment into crypto in 2018, get in the seed round and dump on the public sale so the retail investors carry the bags. This early exit design is really devastating for any crypto project.
Yeah.
So I think we've seen much smarter designs this year, and the IEOs, from my sense, is by limiting supply of fundraising and also putting fundraising within the exchange community. The IEOs are trying to solidify it away from some of the early exit behavior and at least keep price strength. And then you get this final category, which is just some currencies are designed to be used. And then you can design in early upside into these currencies, but they are designed to be spent into existence. And it's just important to know where you stand. I think a lot of the top coins at the moment have this kind of sort of perversity where really they're now, we want to hold them because we can see the upside in holding, but some of them do have an ecosystem where it's important that you spend. Yeah. And so managing this tension, I think that's a really exciting part of the currency design process, is managing that tension. And I don't get it with complicated mathematics and all sorts of crazy formulas. I get it from going back to what's the intention of fundraising, the intention of the economy, and how I'm structuring the fundamentals of the currency so that it will support whichever.
For sure. Yeah, it's always, you're always going to have people that want to just buy and sell. There are traders and there are people that are going to participate with the brand, and there's going to be people in between who kind of see it as opportunistic on some part. But I certainly think that rewarding people for participation and engaging them, not just in the products themselves, but engaging them in various ways to create a certain amount of loyalty and connection to the company, is also what creates community. And so much of tokenomics is also about community, and people often don't see that at all. They're just like, oh, our price is down, so we're going to shut our project. It's like, oh, please, I mean, give me a break. That's just pathetic. But I've seen it firsthand. I've showed you an email with that. It's like, people do this kind of weird stuff. They just don't even know why they're running their projects. They get it wrong. Anyway, let's move to the next one because we've still got 4 more to go. Yeah, so these will be quick. So can your reserve handle redemption costs and volumes? So say it again. Can your reserves, right, handle, effectively, can your reserves handle redemption? Can your reserves handle a run on your currency? Well, if you're talking about buying your own coins back, then your reserves have to be in Ether or Bitcoin. But if you're talking about selling coins, everyone has reserves to do that. That's the problem. They only have reserves that go one way most of the time. Which is absolutely fine until your productive economy kicks in. Correct. And this is where the reserves become really important, because most utility tokens, as we know them, so the reserves are fine if we're talking about a security token. But if we're talking about a utility design, whether it's a coin or kind of a community currency, and it's effectively a pre-purchase for activity on an ecosystem, then when people are going to want to come in and redeem. Yeah. And that's when you need to be able to make sure your reserves are really handy. So there's quite a nice example at the moment with the Binance coin. So it went from being the whole token, the token burn part of it, or which part of the BNB part? Well, no, the utility actually. So because it was originally a transaction fee, correct, coin, I spent a time with a lot of projects in 2018 that were trying to do various forms of investment platforms, blockchain style investment platforms, and redemption was always a critical issue. And so what Binance Coin did really interestingly was, by stabilizing the coin around transaction fees and building volume, you got a moderate level of volatility and a large amount of trust. And so part of the IEO offering that people aren't talking about is the strength in the Binance coin for people to be able to trust large sums of money to be moved into BNB, held for a period of time, and then into this other new currency
That's a new level of trust for the Binance coin. Now, it's very hard to build that kind of level of trust just from day one, which is what a lot of product or service currencies are trying to do. They're trying to say, spend large amounts of my currency and we'll redeem for this product or service. Whereas actually, it's much better generally to have the foundational building blocks of your economy in place, trust in your currency, and then move into larger.
If you look at their token economy, as you say, it started with the simplest part, which was transaction fees. But now, if you look at all the things that they've added, and I'll give a few examples. I mean, one of them is, if you want to get on their launch pad, you have to buy BNB coins in order to then use the BNB coins to buy the Launchpad project, whatever it is. So that's creating buying behavior. And if a lot of people don't manage to get the coins, which they often don't, they're still holding the BNB coins. So they've created an artificial more buying than there is selling of their own coin, which is driving the price up. They, of course, have, which was part of their original model, they have their token burn. So every so often they're burning tokens, and by burning tokens, they're reducing supply. Reducing supply, even if the demand is flat, would still drive the price up, so long as there's trading going on. And then, of course, the other thing that they're doing, which is really clever, is, which I really like, I may have talked with you about this before, is the idea that when you get stuck with all this dust, whether it's dust that's being created by other people's referral codes where they trade and you get a little bit of dust from them, or where you do your own trades and you collect dust, they will literally take the dust and flip it into BNB coins, and they're sweeping up the dust from everybody. But if you sweep up, 0.0001 times 1,000, it's now 0.01. And that's usually more than enough of something to be of value. So they can sweep up dust in Dash, Bitcoin, Litecoin, whatever coin, Syndicator, Fetch, whatever. And they can sweep up all this dust from all these coins across every user. And actually, they're building up a whole arsenal of other coins that they can then flip to Bitcoin, flip to USD Tether. They could use it to buy BNB with their own coins. So they're creating their own dust. But in the process, they can buy BNB and drive the price up themselves with the other coins. I mean, it's crazy, but that's what a treasury department can do. And all of that is just fueling an economy internally that's just a Binance economy. And I know there's a ton of other things that they're launching and doing, but it just gives a flavor of the stuff I can see that they're doing. It's like amazing. I mean, It's very, very innovative.
Exactly. And it's really healthy because you're building from a foundation in transaction fees where you come back. The reserves could handle redemption.
Yep.
Whereas when we're talking of other projects where it was going to be buy my token and that's a pre-purchase for investment into a privately held company, or it's a pre-purchase for shoes, or it's a pre-purchase for this form of utility. If you don't have the strength in the currency and you get price fluctuation, then if the price is increasing and they've got, say, increased purchasing power, the reserves might have $1 million for redemption. But if the currency's gone up 10 times, then people have $10 million worth of that product or service to redeem. So effectively, what you're committing to in your bank or in your reserves, you can't fulfill the service obligation that you've provided.
Right.
So getting this right is absolutely crucial. And the way I've seen projects handle this is we will keep 30% of our fundraise, ETH or Bitcoin in reserve. And you look at it and say, well, actually, no, what you need is a mechanism to say that at all times, if our coin is a pre-purchase for future utility, we need to be guaranteeing, no matter what our price fluctuation, that we can provide that utility. And I see so many projects still now get this aspect wrong, and they're killing their productive economy before it even exists, because they can't meet the pre-sold demand.
No, that's true. Very true. How interesting. So should we move to, let's see, 6, 7, number 8?
Number 8. So, and this is the counter of this point is, can your users handle the price fluctuations? This again comes down to how are you building your economy and currency in tune in different phases. So let's take this Binance coin example again. If Binance went straight onto Launchpad and didn't have transaction fees, and so didn't have a mechanism for maintaining the price stability and for creating price increase like they do, you might have put in 10K worth of Binance coin into one of the regional launchpad projects. And if that 10K had decreased because Binance coin dropped by 20%, you'd only have 8K worth of purchasing power into this new project. This is a massive problem in most blockchain startups.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you get that you purchase your token and you're like, great, okay, price is fluctuating. Now I want to be able to redeem. Now I want to be able to use my token. My goodness, what I have, either it's increased and the organization can't redeem, can't provide me the service, or it's decreased and I get a half of what I've paid for. Well, that doesn't make sense. I pre-purchased, I was an early supporter, I'm a member of the community, and now I want to get my pair of shoes, or now I want to make my investment, or now I want to redeem for this service, and I only get a half of what I expected, or 1/10, given what happened to prices last year.
Yeah, so the interesting thing there is that normally what I find with the tokenomics on this is that everyone tends to kind of price their service at $1, and the number of tokens you need is determined by the cost of the service at $1 times the number of coins that you have to get, or divided by the number of coins. So where you would find, like, say, for example, okay, I need 1,000 coins today, I might need 10,000 coins tomorrow. And of course that is troublesome, because if you have a monthly service and you bought a bunch of tokens and now the tokens have dropped and you're like, oh no, now they're only worth half. So it doesn't create a very smart economy. So of course that gets into a whole other discussion around how do you create stable coins, of which we won't talk about here because it is a whole other topic. Yep. But it's certainly one that's worth, looking at some point, because I've had discussions with people about stable coins, and, projects like DAI Maker, the DAI coin, are amazing at how they've managed to create the most stable coin out there. And I don't know how they've done that exactly. I haven't investigated in any detail, but it leaves me with a reason to go and investigate, because the tokenomics of trying to use the coin itself, which fluctuates wildly, to then spend it inside the ecosystem of the platform has always been a bit of a troubling part for me and all these token models, because you can't, how am I supposed to spend if I don't know what I'm doing? And I've often said to people, then use a token that's going to be stable. Why don't you just run it in USD Tether? And if you're going to do that, that could be fine as a mechanism for receiving payment, but it doesn't mean that you don't use your other coin in some other way for rewarding people or incentivizing them. You have to be really smart how you do it. I'm not suggesting USD Tether is the answer. I'm just suggesting that people need to get a little bit more clever about how they create an ecosystem so that it doesn't create a fear, but rather just creates comfort.
The point with the design here that we're really trying to get at is that this is both about the stage of the economy and the price of what is being sold on the economy. And then, so it comes psychologically. How do people feel about price fluctuations related to how they want to participate? So where it becomes really important is when you hit that threshold and the fluctuation impacts someone.
Right.
So a transaction point is generally absolutely fine to be able to handle fluctuation. So if I'm using my BNB or another exchange coin for my transaction fees, and it goes up 50 times, or it goes down, to 0.1, I'm not super fast in general about that 5-cent equivalent or the $1 equivalent, because I'm seeing my participation in terms of holding or long-term upside. The utility doesn't matter to me so much. But the moment that comes into it's a $10,000 investment and suddenly there's a 30% drop and now I've only put in 7,000, it matters a huge amount. Now, when it's free money, in the sense, if I purchased early into Ethereum and then I was buying ICOs, I'm less site sensitive. So my users can handle these price fluctuations. But when it's fiat coming in to Ethereum for the first time and going into an ICO, and suddenly, my 10K became 7 and now it's 2.
Yeah, of course. If you invested in and then the coin tanked and now you've got less to spend on the platform, I'm not sure many people actually intended on spending on the platform the day that the coin was released anyway, because let's face it, most of the projects at best had no MVP in 2016. They talked about MVPs in 2017. They had some form of MVPs in 2018, but we still don't see many, we don't have a lot of working products, and here we are in 2019. We're seeing more, but not enough, not significant enough to say, oh yeah, we've got really working products. So without those working products that are fully operational and running, then all we have are what we call bags. which is the worst case scenario for those who actually invested to actually use the platform. But I think most people didn't do that, to be fair. I think most people bought on speculation of the future value of the coin, not buying for the utility of the coin itself.
And this comes in, like, so you need flexibility in your design so that your users at any stage of your economy can handle fluctuations for what they're prepared to pay for on the platform.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to show an example of like how that can evolve and where your threshold might start, where your threshold might move to, and just really for good design, absolutely don't get people trying to pre-purchase into a product or service and spend high amounts or high volumes of coin on things, because we're saying people could use price or supply to be able to satisfy this, and both create a negative experience for your user, because even if you peg the price to $1 and fluctuate supply, as a user and pre-purchaser, you still lose all of your purchasing power.
Yeah, so the flip to that would be, well, but I stake my coins, and so I'm being given some sort of interest of additional coins, or I'm getting additional coins just for staking or whatever it is. And as a result of doing that, you're actually reducing the total amount of loss that the person has, which means that actually holding the coins may be more advantageous in a bear market than dumping the coins and hoping that the ether goes up and makes back what you've lost. So there is some argument to say that in bear markets, giving people some sort of hold the coin for some sort of utility value isn't a bad thing. And by doing that, you're getting the people more engaged and hopefully more loyal to the project. And in doing that, you have an opportunity to reach out to them more because they've got a node, they've got some sort of reason to be engaged. You should be sending them newsletters, getting them involved, and asking them for help in the project and whatever skills they've got, because they're already committed anyway. And you never know, if you ask people for something and you're giving them some coins for free for staking, you never know. People will probably say, oh, why not? I like this project, I'll help out. And a classic project that does a lot of that in terms of getting community involvement is Litecoin. I mean, it's a foundation. You've got people out there, like, we met Litecoin recently, and they were telling us a story of a guy that's out in New Jersey running around trying to get everybody to adopt Litecoin. Why? He doesn't have any reason to do it. They're not paying him. He's just loyal to the project. He likes what they're doing. He likes the business case, the use case, and that kind of loyalty is just unquestionable. Like I told you off camera, my loyalty to Apple is ridiculous because it works and it does what I want and more. And so I will sit there and I will talk, and if Apple wants to come on the show and ask me why I like Apple so much, that's fine too. But I mean, that's what loyalty does. And because of that loyalty, I would stake Apple coins and hold the Apple coins. I wouldn't care if Apple price is going up and down, because I know the long-term game is they're giving good products to me. They work. They're continuing to add more products, more services, and therefore I expect the coin will go up in value anyway. I think the problem I see with a lot of staking coins is, why do I want to stake the coins when I don't know what the ecosystem is going to be and where it's going? And that's where the loyalty breaks from the staking, because I don't know the vision and the future. I can say, oh yeah, you've got a roadmap, and you say you've delivered to the roadmap, and I would say, well, I don't really agree that you've delivered. You're kind of sugarcoating your own roadmap now, or other things, right? I want to see people actually deliver and exceed my expectations and say, you know what? Now that we've done the first 18 months, we're going to do this. And it's so much bigger that I say, you know what? I'm hanging on to my coins. I'm going to go stake some more coins. I'm getting into this for the long haul because there's a lot more to come. That's what we need, but that's not happening.
Well, and where it happens quite well is coins that don't fundraise, but they're built out of a mining community. So
sure. Oh yeah, that's true.
Like Raven coin, for example, and you build.
Yeah, Raven has an amazing community of people that just want to mine the coin for the coin, and I don't sometimes understand why, but they've somehow done it. I mean, I haven't gotten into it, but I have friends who are set up mining operations in Mexico. They're like, yeah, I've got a whole mine operation, and if you want to, add your stuff to my pool, I'm like, I don't even understand, but I haven't looked at it. I don't have time to look at every project out there. But hey, if the Ravencoin guys are watching or listening to this and they want to jump in, or if anybody knows Ravencoin and wants to introduce us, happy to have them here, because it'd be really interesting to understand what did they do to build their economics and ecosystem, and the loyalty that they've got, because it's an incredible loyalty for that project.
Exactly. And so, yeah, so this, this real question gets to the heart of, it's a relative question. Can your users handle your price fluctuations really relates to a lot of the way you've answered and you built your community in question before. And that bridges us really nicely to, are you using examples that influence your business and currency design that are based on the same context as you have?
This is question number 9. Question number 9, right?
This is question number 9. So in other words, like, and this is sort of the related question to question 1. Are you struggling with your token economics? Because what I see so much is, well, I heard about Ravencoin and they've done this, so I'm going to do that. It's like, yes, but you don't mine your coin into existence. You want to fundraise. Or I want to follow this model and I want my coin to go this way. Well, yeah, but you want to do an STO, not an IEO. And so it's this kind of, it's hard to be deeply embedded in the crypto world and understand where you fit and what you're trying to build until you're in it. It's this kind of catch-22, isn't it?
Right.
And so that's why actually a lot of good projects come as spin-offs from previously successful projects. I'm embedded in the world. I want to do something slightly different. I know the context. Now I'm going to design for this context. That is absolutely fantastic.
For sure.
Anything that's derivative is a real worry, because the odds are that people haven't identified the context in which the design they're copying came from. And so they're going to perpetuate an inaccurate pattern that will destabilize either their fundraising or their economy. And to me, this is one of the reasons why people will call a lot of the crypto projects, Ponzi schemes or scams. It's that the patterns that were followed were like, oh, here's the bit of Ethereum where you make a lot of money. I'm going to follow that pattern, instead of here's the bit where you lock your tokens for a year and you build and no one believes in your project. And then instead of following that, they only follow this particular piece. So I get so much of, how can I design this currency that works exactly like this other currency? And what they're saying is, how can I get the price curve like this? Not where's my business? Am I a community? Am I a business? So do I want a coin? Do I want to offer a security? What kind of mechanisms do I want for reserves? How do I want to support users? How do I handle price fluctuations? And just going into the fundamentals, it's not actually that hard. But you have to design for your context. You have to design for your...
Well, what is hard is actually trying to come up with a model which is interesting enough that creates that sort of dynamic, because a lot of these token models, honestly, they're sort of half-baked, and you realize part of it's because doing tokenomics isn't all that easy, because you're dealing with single token models, dual token models, and why do I want 2 tokens versus 1 token, and and what does staking mean for me, and what am I giving them for staking? Am I giving them more of the same coin, or am I giving them a different coin? If I'm going to have a stable platform with a stable fee, how do I structure that? How do I increase the value over time and decrease supply over time? Or what do I have to do to create that level of stability? So you've got these really weird contradictions, because on the one hand, we all want the price of the coins to go up. And at the other hand, we want stability for the platform for utility. And you can't have both, because it isn't going to work. Because who the hell wants to invest in a stable coin?
You can actually have, there are ways of having both, but it takes a certain set of conditions.
Yeah, I haven't seen them yet. Let me put it that way.
Well, no, because it's very tricky to have both in a fixed supply environment.
Right.
Because because of how you're trying to manage inflation and deflation of price in a fixed supply environment. And obviously in a stablecoin environment, there's a stablecoin. So the design is stable, but there are designs that you can put in place to have increased purchasing power for early investors, and then over time, as whatever you're building commoditizes, then you reach a point of price stability.
Sure.
But I hear you, 99.9% of cases,
it's too hard, too messy. Too hard. And people are so confused by it that they just can't get their heads around it, that they just kind of abandon and go back to, I'll have 1 token and let the token fluctuate in value. And you're like, okay. And then when it does fluctuate in value, they go, oh no, this is all bad. And you're like, well, no, this was your token design. It was from the beginning. And we told you that from the beginning. You just didn't listen. And I mean, then the classic example was I saw one project where they said, oh, but now we have some investors who are dumping the coins at this price. And I said, you guys have got to be the luckiest people on the planet. And they're like, why? I said, because you have a ceiling. That means you can create stability as long as you've got buyers at, let's say, between 8 and 1. We'll just 0.8 and 1. Let's just use those numbers. If everyone's selling at 1, then your ceiling is 1. And if there's that many people selling at 1, then the price won't go above 1, which is great because your price on the exchange or your platform was around 1. But then as long as you've got enough buying behavior going on between 0.8 and 1, you've got pretty damn close to a stable coin. You're lucky because most platforms won't get anywhere near that because there won't be that you'll have fluctuation that goes wildly 80, 100, 200%. You've got pump and dump stuff. But having those those sellers that are that vast, even a pump wouldn't get you out of that dollar level. So you're lucky. And that example project shut down because they couldn't understand what to do because the coin wasn't going to go up. And I said, you're lucky it's stable because it means you can always sell your coins at that $1 price. So as money comes in and you need to flip it to run your business, you can always sell it $1 and you're lucky. And they totally missed the point of actually being the closest project I've seen to having some level of stability because they had a lot of investors with a lot of coins with a fixed price to sell. And it was a manufactured stable coin, but needless to say, it's like, that's lucky. So take the luck and go with it. You guys have got something that others don't have, and they did not get it at all. Totally missed the point.
Yeah, so very interesting. What I'm hoping with these questions is that there is ultimately delivering a lot of these currencies is incredibly complex. Both the detailed design and the management of the economy, like we should expect, because these are huge economies where we're trying to build. And what I'm trying to highlight is that is true, but there can also be an inner simplicity to the overall picture of the coin that you're trying to build and how it works during fundraising and how it works during the growth of your economy. And if you can have that simple picture, you can explain it to your team, to your investors, to the partners in your ecosystem in a way that they can get it in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, which is also
sure. Absolutely.
If you can't do that, like if someone needs to understand your currency, and the best is read this currency paper and an hour and understand this mathematics and all those kind of things, then how are you going to get the scale and the adoption of people that need to know, can I believe in this? Can I trust it? How's it going to work? When we really need to incorporate those.
Try reading the Telegram white paper, which was 168 pages for the ton coin, 168 pages of text with calculations throughout. And I thought, you know what? Full of crap. Sorry. But if you're going to write 168 pages, then it's a theoretical pile of whatever, because nobody can grasp this. No one's going to read this. No one's going to get through it all. And there's no diagrams. There's no pictures. There's no story about what the product is going to do. It's different. It's just 168 pages of textual stuff that I tried to flip through and read and said, you know what? I don't care. It's so I totally agree with you about putting documents out there, trying to make them so they're actually useful to everybody and not so theoretical that nobody can understand what you're on about. Because frankly, if you write something that theoretical, it probably won't work. I'm not saying that the telegrams won't work. I'm just saying 168 pages of bump doesn't really do anything for me.
You need the detail underneath. It's all layers. You have to have the detail. You have to
summarize it. Just tell me what it's going to do. And if I can assess it that way, then I can make a judgment and go, you know what, this is great. But I think it's almost like, let's hide inside of 168 pages and not tell anybody anything, because then you just get a bunch of, investors that throw a ton of money at it because of the fact that it's Telegram and it's a big name. But actually, we don't know anything about the real tokenomics because it's not laid out in a simple, easy way to understand. It's too many pages of content. And who has the time to sit there digesting it all and figuring it out? So thank you so much for publishing a true white paper. Give us a yellow paper that summarizes it in business terms so we understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and please
So.
help me stop getting scammed on your
Yeah,
platform.
please add some KYC in your damn platform. But frankly, so should LinkedIn. I'm tired of all the scammers coming to me too. I've had plenty of them. So anyway, let's move to question 10 before we diverge completely into something else and go down a rabbit hole.
Oh, I think it was only 9 questions.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed.
I thought there was 10. Well, what's the last? Okay, so the last question is ICO versus STO versus is there something else? And I'll give my little quick take on ICO versus STO and is there something else? And then jump in. Here's my thing. ICOs generally as a principle make sense because they're easy to get engaged and involved with. And they're kind of like what Indiegogo or what's the other one, Kickstarter offered in terms of I can go and get involved with a project and they didn't even give you anything. I mean, most of the projects promised you products and you didn't even get them, but people still put money into crowdsourcing projects. That principle for me in ICO makes a lot of sense. I certainly see some issues where it goes to the extreme of scams, issues of, as we talked about earlier, coins that don't have any limitations in terms of lockout periods and other things like that. But the flip side is when you get to the STO and you say, now we've locked out the entire crowd and the only people who can get in are accredited investors. And you think that is not the point of these projects, to exclude the crowd. The entire point of ICO and crypto and blockchain, as far as I'm concerned, is to engage the world in making the world a better place by being able to do things like service the unbanked. Well, we're not going to achieve that by excommunicating all of the community who actually care about this, like people in countries like in India or Africa or South America or parts of rural China where they don't have access to banking and services. And how the hell are we going to engage those people in any form of engagement in this thing if we exclude them all through accredited investment only and then locking people into 1 year of tokens? And interestingly enough, I think STO has been a big epic fail personally, because there haven't been many STOs, and those who have been out there, they take forever to get up and running. It costs 3-4 times what an ICO does, and they're not raising money. Because why would an investor who's accredited, and this is where the key for me with STO is, why would an accredited investor who could have equity take tokens instead? And if they do get the tokens, they get a much smaller percentage typically of dividend over an equity investor. And an equity investor would say, well, hang on a second, I used to get 100% of dividend, and now I only get 80 or 70 or 60% because you gave the rest of it over to the other guys over there for tokens. So that's not very good. So everybody loses on that from an investor perspective, which tells me that we've got something in the middle here where you need, I feel like something that's pseudo, dare I say, regulated in such a way that it's protecting us as investors, but it doesn't stop a guy that may not be accredited that just says, you know what, I've got 5K or 10K I want to invest, or I've got 1,000 I want to invest, and they don't have to have $1 million in a bank account in order to be accredited to participate, but equally, we have the right safeguards in place to allow them to participate. And I feel like that gap between ICO and total kind of chaos and madness and free-for-all, which is kind of fun in one way, but a little scary on another, and the STO, which has gone to the other extreme of let's play in the world of VCs, for me, neither of those camps necessarily works. We went from one extreme to another, as we always do, and we need to find a middle ground. And the question for me is there a middle ground between ICO and STO?
Good question. And I probably look at it a little bit differently in that if the world of blockchain is about building decentralized economies, then we're going to replicate a whole bunch of different current fundraising mechanisms and new ones.
Yep.
So to me, it's inevitable that there'll be a spectrum. What I wrote in the article where this table came from, the 9 questions, was I think ICOs, coins and community offerings, I think have been unnecessarily lumped together. So I see something like Ethereum was actually more a community offering than a coin offering.
Yeah.
And the community offerings are really interesting to me because what you're trying to achieve, one, you have to raise through the crowd because you're trying to build, you're trying to use distributed design. And so the people you're raising from are going to be your users, and you don't want a centralizing force like venture capital or like large investors to be able to impact or diminish what you're trying to build.
Sure.
So I think at the heart, there are a few projects every year that truly disintermediate and decentralize industries, and they have to do a community style offering. So I look to those ones to have massive impact, but that can't be a general wave of fundraising. I think that the ICOs, I'm pretty sure you're right. They're dead because retail, there's not the retail investment market. There hasn't been for a year. Retail have been left to the bag holders for ICOs, where the syndicates and VCs were able to dump on launch. So finding a retail market will only rely on when retail investors are flush with cash again.
Well, so that's an interesting point. So what I do see happening right now is the IEO space has jumped up big time in Asia. I wouldn't say that it's in any way jumped up in Europe or North America at all. It's still dead as it could be. But if you look at Asia, you see Huobi launched Huobi Prime. Coinbean is launching a new IEO platform, and they're going to be the first time you can actually buy ICOs in China. You've got there's another one in Korea. Is it Upbit? Maybe I think it's called. And then you've got KuCoin is talking about launching something, and then you've got Bittrex, which will launch one in Malta, which may or may not succeed. But the reason they're doing that is because it re-engages the syndicates to be able to get tokens, in private sales early, and then get out at a higher price on exchange. And the exchanges are sponsoring the projects, which means that what I like about this is you're creating a layer in between the retailers and the buyers, which is the exchanges, which are actually sussing out all the good and bad projects, and they're only taking the best ones. It means that probably only 1 in 100 is actually getting even out there and listed on an exchange at all for the purposes of doing the fundraising. But theoretically, you can shop yourself around to 8 or 10 of these exchanges, and one or several of them will fight over you to get you on there. And that gives you a pretty good indication that only good ones should actually be out there and the rest won't. Of course, that's our hope, that the exchanges are doing the right thing to protect us. But now we're going back to a centralized mechanism of someone making decisions on our behalf, because we're incapable of making good decisions because we got scammed. And let's face it, we were not able to make good decisions, David, because we got scammed. We got caught out, every one of us, on something or another along the way in crypto. And now we've got the exchanges to protect us. And they may be scammed too, because I've seen scam projects still get onto these exchanges. So it's just another mechanism, but it's an interesting one because it is sort of in the middle, but it's still ICO mechanism. But it's removing some of the scamming us personally, because you go through the exchanges to buy now. If you can even get a coin.
See, I don't know. I look at it in the following way: like, there was distributed liquidity when the individual buyers were flush with cash in 2017. The liquidity is pooled around exchanges now. The exchanges were the part of the crypto world that made money in 2018, even if they were making less, and even in early 2019, if they were making less than early 2018, that's fine. No one else was making money. And so where you have liquidity is where you have opportunity to raise. The exchanges have been able to take liquidity and say, well, what extra services? Okay, we can create launch pads, IEOs, etc. on top of it. What's really interesting to me about that mechanism is that it's not a scam or not. But the one question I have is, if we are trying to build decentralized organizations that achieve goals towards further decentralization, products and services, industries, how you can do that without a community baffles me. And if you're raising on an exchange, you're not raising to a community, you're raising to the liquidity that exists within that exchange. That is very different from raising.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that you're actually relying on the liquidity of that exchange to make the whole thing work. Because if people are not registered there, if they're not registered there, they might get more users. But if you are registered there, then you're just, they may not be adding that many new users, so you're totally dependent on the here's the point, on the legitimacy of the true volumes taking place on that exchange, of which many of us know that most of the volume on these exchanges is wash trading, which means that the buy and the sell point are bots that are running a buy and a sell of a coin like this at the same price to just make it look like they've got volume. And it's well known that most of these exchanges do not have that level of volume. So great point, because now you say, I'll move to a legitimate exchange. And now the question is, which exchanges are legitimate and have no wash trades? And we have no body, no organization that's out there as a watchdog trying to make sure that the exchanges are doing legitimate things. And now we're getting right back into the same old regulation thing of kind of like having the FCA in the UK or the SEC in the US or whatever body, FINMA in Switzerland, where those bodies are basically monitoring what the exchanges do. And we don't have an equivalent body monitoring the exchanges' behaviors and patterns. Notwithstanding, by the way, that fundraising is a regulated activity. And by putting an IEO on these exchanges, it's actually not legal in many countries because they're doing fundraising. So that's why I said, where's the middle ground where we have to draw a line and say, actually, we have to loosen up the rules on fundraising a little bit to allow these things to flow, because we're stopping it. Because one of the exchanges that I work with quite a lot, they don't do this IEO because their team is sitting in the US, because they're based in the Cayman Islands, and because the Cayman Islands is a very closely aligned, following US law country. So they won't do the IEO because they don't want to get in trouble with the SEC for doing fundraising without having a dealer license or a broker-dealer license. Now I know they're trying to get one. So they would be a regulated exchange, and then they could do fundraising and launch legitimate IEOs. But then if they do them in the US, they're going to have the same old problem of, oh, is it a token or utility token, or is it a security? So you go in circles with some of this stuff, like, well, then we need to find some sort of way to do legal fundraising legitimately under a certain value limit that we know is not causing some issues, because we all want to get involved and participate, and we don't want the laws to get in the way of us being able to drive a new economy. And actually, sometimes things are just outdated. Sometimes they're correct, and they're there for a reason to protect us. I'm not sure which it is right now, to be completely honest. I'm on the fence on this.
So it's interesting. So what I see that there will be, when I see signs of health, it is that business that's raising money knows what it's doing, has built a currency that works for the thing it's trying to do, and raises money in a way that suits it. It could be mining. It could be they break the mold and run a Kickstarter/ICO. It could be that they run an IEO. It could be an STO. There's middle ground or new things that will work out. I'd be happy if there were 10 or 15 mechanisms.
Yeah.
But the story I want to leave with is, if I'm a business now that wants to run an IEO, because that's where money comes from, but I'm trying to build decentralized user base, what will happen is I will launch on the Binance Launchpad if I'm lucky enough to be able to get there. Great, one of the 1,000, fantastic. I'm super excited. There's a big push. My coin goes up, my coin dumps a little bit, and I'm on an exchange early. Now, fantastic. In theory, everybody happy. The problem for me now is, unlike in the ICO world where pre-fundraising I'd worked and started building a community, now post-fundraising I have to build my community.
Yeah.
Because my Binance, the people who purchased on Binance, they're not in my Telegram channel necessarily. They're not in my world. They're not engaged with what I'm trying to build. Yep. I was just another product on Binance for them to buy and sell. So while it looks great that I've been in my IEO and I've raised my money, maybe I'm starting from a much lower base than a bunch of ICOs. So that's the place. Like, I want to make sure that community projects that are trying to build decentralized solutions are able to raise money from their community.
For sure. So crowdfunding should fundamentally be, so if Kickstarter and Indiegogo can follow along where they provide a platform where people can raise money, that's fundraising as far as I'm concerned. I think the same rules should apply in the IEO space, that it's just, let's call Indiegogo and let's call Kickstarter exchanges, and they have crowds of people that are funding projects. The only difference is you're getting utility tokens, which have true utility within those ecosystems, versus companies that promise products that never deliver anything, and you lose your money and you have no recourse for the money lost because all the risks on you. Frankly, I think the IEO as on an exchange is probably just as valid, if not more valid, in that from that very limited standpoint than going and putting my money out for a 3D printer or for a bamboo bicycle for my kids, which never come. And literally, those are things I invested in, which were cool. I mean, bamboo bicycle, a bamboo bicycle, nice, eco-friendly, and they just never got the product off the ground. I mean, I was very sad. And 3D printer was kind of a craze. I thought that'd be cool to have a 3D printer. I don't know what I'd use it for, but I mean, I'll put a bit of money in to help them get off the ground. Never got the printer, And there was excuse after excuse after excuse about what we were doing wrong in terms of what code we were putting into the system to get the damn printer. And we just gave up and said, you know what? Probably a scam. How is that any different as being a scam from these ICOs? I could put the same $300 into an ICO and lose the same money, but people call that a scam, but not getting those products made that they promise and promise and promise they're going to make and deliver, and they never deliver. That could have been a scam too. But it's funny that we never turned to the Kickstarter and Indiegogo companies, the projects that are on there, or those exchanges housing all those projects, and we never went to the stage of calling all these projects as scams. But if you ask people who put money into those crowdfunding things, so many people will say, yeah, I already invested 5 or 10 times and I never got my products. Funny that, because I never got my products in the crypto world either. So what's the difference? And yet we call the crypto ones scams, and we say they have to be regulated, and we say that they have to be, fundraising legally, and we have all these legal constraints we put in for those, but we don't seem to apply the same rules for crowdfunding when it's for products we never received in the Kickstarter Indiegogo world. I just find that so hypocritical, and I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why we're so hypercritical of one and so overly desensitized to the other that we don't even care. It's just absolutely hypocritical to me. But there you go. Cool. Well, this was cool. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And thank you for coming in to bring out these 9+ points. I've really enjoyed this little debate with you, and I'm always happy to do more debates with you on these things. So we should follow it up with something else. And maybe we'll ask our listeners what they'd like us to debate. And whatever they come back with, we'll just go for it unprepared, because that could be fun.
Fantastic. And yeah, let's just hope that there's a bunch of people or projects out there that can take value from this stuff and design simpler or better currencies as a result. That would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, how to design better currencies, how to do better fundraising, how to make your tokenomics work better for your business. All very important things that most people seem to forget. They do get overly caught up on their coin rather than their project, rather than the fundraise itself. I mean, so singularly focused on coin price. And I think people that work in publicly traded companies tend to just kind of park it aside and get on with day-to-day business life. But in crypto, everyone's obsessed with the coin price. So, there's some really good discussion points we've had on all of this, which is great. And hopefully people will take some value from this and come back to us with questions, comments down below in the description, or comments to us on our blogs on the website. And hopefully they'll get some value from this and engage us, and we can answer questions. So great. So David, thank you very much for as I said, for this two-parter. It's been really fun having you here. Thank you everybody for listening, watching, for participating. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, ring the little bell, because David Atkinson is our friend and he likes to get lots of likes and subscribes too. To the moon. Until next time.